Welcome to the February meeting, guys. We have Chris here. He's going to give us a nice little presentation. We'll take some questions here at the end. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone. And we'll let Chris unmute himself, and he should be in spotlight view. So take it away, Chris.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Sweet. Well, nice to see the Rainbow Fly Fishing Club again. Thanks for inviting me back. I know we don't have a whole lot of people because it's February, but for those of you that are new, my name's Chris Morris. I work for Trophy Water Guide Service. We operate out of East Tennessee. Specifically, we operate out of the northeast corner of Tennessee. So we kind of border the northwest corner of North Carolina and the southwest corner of Virginia. In a second, I'll pull up that map and kind of give you a visual of all that. But first, I just wanted to let you know I was from Charlotte, North Carolina, born and raised. I came up here about 15 years ago to go to Appalachian State. I got my degree here, continued to be a guide after that 4-year degree, was going to pay me the same amount to do the same thing. And here I am now. It's been 10 years with Trophy Water. We started in 2009. The guide service is pretty established now. We hire only full-time guides, not as a requirement. That's just kind of how we've ran. And we now operate with 6 full-time guides. We just brought on the first guide in a while last year. But each of us take about 150 to 250 trips per year. So we pretty much dedicate our entire life to the guide service. Mostly, I just want to kind of, I guess, give you the overview of the fishery, the area, and what you can do, either do it yourself or float trip. I'll probably be going over the float trips primarily to, invite you to come visit us. But at the end, hopefully I'll be able to get back to the map and show you places that you can stay, the popular cities and areas where people like to stay when they come visit us. And then in addition, I hope I can just kind of mention the small creek activity. We do walk and wade trips around the region, the northwest corner of North Carolina, the southwest corner of Virginia are excellent for non-navigable waters that hold great trout fishing. But access points can be tough to navigate around, stuff like that. But these are fisheries that hold 20 to 25 inch stream-born brown trout that you can target on foot, particularly in the areas near Damascus, Virginia. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of Beaver Dam Creek. I guess White Top Laurel would be the most popular of the region. But there's a lot. I mean, those are just the ones people have written about. I spend my time kind of stomping around on these big brown trout that hide under rocks and eat crayfish and eat minnows and can grow to sizes that you just absolutely will not see right over the state line in North Carolina. A lot of that has to do with the limestone in the region. But like I said, minnows and crayfish play a big part in that as well. So even though I'll be talking a lot about the trout fishing we do from boats, keep in mind that our area is just abundant with fishing opportunities. So we'll try to share the screen here and just let me know if something doesn't work, somebody come back on and tell me I'm not mirroring the right thing, because sometimes I'll just forget to mirror. First, we'll go to our home page here. Can y'all see?
You're good. Yep.
Trophy Water Guide Service. Okay. And this video will play in a second. It's about 4 minutes long. It's just such a great consolidated overview that I'm going to play it for you. It does lag a little bit, but the words kind of sync up with the video, so it'll work out. First, though, my boss has given me permission to offer you guys 10% off in our fly shop. So if y'all want, you can go to this fly shop tab here, and you can order lamps and reels, Loomis rods, Reddington rods, wading boots, fly lines, stuff like that. Just enter the promo code Rainbow Fly Fish, all lowercase, and you get 10% off of anything on our store. This is kind of our wintertime thing. COVID's been really good to us all year. Honestly, we haven't struggled much, but this is our normal wintertime thing. We try to push retail. We try to push February and March trips. We're fortunate to have only those couple months be a problematic time of year where we can't get a whole lot of clients. But I understand our fishery is more year round than most seasonal fisheries. But we really would like to push float trips in February and March too. So we're also offering to anyone in y'all's club $400 float trips through February. And February is freaking awesome. I caught 50 fish with a client yesterday, about 10 of which were on dry. It's just a cold month and we don't have a lot of people coming up here. So you're looking at a year-round fishery. And yeah, that's our fly shop tab. If you guys ever do want to get your hands on some physical stuff, just try to think about us first if you can. But we're going to play this video that kind of gives you it runs you over what the South Holston and the Watauga trout fisheries are about. And I will touch on smallmouth bass later with just some pictures from our smallmouth bass fisheries. But this is an overview of what we do as a guide service on the trout fisheries, which I think a couple of your club members are very familiar with already. You see that?
My brother and I operate Trophy Water Guide Service. We're located in Hampton, Tennessee. We have a small fly shop to go along with our busy little guide service.
I'm going to pause here just to make sure you guys can hear me or hear the video.
Yeah, you're good.
And make note that all of these are trout between 20 and 30 inches. Probably this one right here, if you can see my cursor, is about 29 or 30, probably the biggest of the group. But all of these fish, this one here, this one here, this one here, 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 you can kind of make out their silhouettes. So I just wanted to point that out. I won't interrupt the video anymore, but it's really cool, this drone footage.
We guide a lot year round. It's all we do. We live for it. I love it. It's my entire life. My brother's the same way. The South Holston River is one of the better brown trout rivers, I believe, in the entire nation. It has monster brown trout. It's a world-class fishery. South Holston comes from a high elevation lake, so it stays cold year round. It has upwards to 5,000 to 6,000 fish a mile, which is some of the top in the nation. It's anywhere from 49 to 53 degrees coming from the lake. It's a year-round fishery. Midges, blue wings in the winter, transitioning into sulfurs in the summer. You get blonde caddis in the spring. What's most special are these big giant lake run browns that run up out of the lake. I like to see them, I like to cast to them, and I like to catch them. We sight fish to them with little stuff, long drifts, little flies, light line, tactics used to catch big giant fish. It's really fun. Yes. It's definitely a niche of ours that we've developed and we feel we're very good at. Great fishery for the advanced angler to target world-class fish. Look at her. Good work. So 20 minutes from the South Holston is the Watauga tailwater. Again, it originates from a high elevation lake, stays cold year round, abundant hatches, diverse hatches. The Mother's Day caddis hatch in April is something to behold. Hordes of caddis flying everywhere all over the rocks.
monster 10-pounder. Oh, he's giant brown. Giant. I'll ride him all the way to the takeout. Woo, he's working. Yeah. How about that, boys? How about that, boys? Good shit. That's an ancient beast. He just engulfed it.
Watauga River offers very long scenic floats as well as wade fishing opportunities for our guests looking to do it on their own. You can throw streamers, wet flies, nymphs all in one trip, all in one day, and catch fish on all those tactics. And it really produces on a consistent basis year round.
Oh, God dang. He is like 15.
For the guys looking to do it on their own, lots of wade fish opportunities. There's lodging right on the rivers as well. So you'll have access to private property. Our fly shop is essentially located amongst the three rivers. Both the South Holston, the Watauga, and the Nolichucky, you'll have multiple options. Streamside cabins, fancy lodges, or just a hotel in town. So there's plenty to choose from. For the do-it-yourselfers, you can stop in and we can outfit you from head to toe. A very wide selection of flies, over 300 varieties to choose from for our rivers. Big streamers, poppers, bass, striper, trout, we got it all. So we love guiding. We like to fish too, but we really like to fish through our customers. We get the experience through them. We love putting people on fish. My brother Rhett and I, we've been guiding our whole lives. It's a passion of ours. We will go 20, 30 days in a row guiding, and we won't pick up a rod and fish one.
All right, so we spent a lot of money on that, so I figured I'd show it to you. But keep in mind that was in one single day of filming. We devoted 3 days of filming, and for the next 2 days, we just streamer fished and flew a drone around the river because our cameraman was just beside himself that we had gotten everything we needed on the very first day. And keep in mind, this was probably 7 or 8 years ago. This was when we didn't have the knowledge that we do now. So, I mean, this fishery produces. And now everybody really knows about it. So, I mean, we're kind of careful about who we invite, but, you know, everybody deserves to find the fishery, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword at this point. It's like, we don't want to be the next San Juan River, and we've got lots of clients, but we like discussing these things with experienced clients and kind of discussing the options. So I'll give you an overview here. First, we'll start with the map of the region. Hopefully you can all see the map here. This is the three lakes. The South Holston Lake here, where the South Holston River originates. This is the Watauga Lake here. And this is Boone Lake here. So both fisheries flow into the same lake, Boone Lake, and both come from separate sources. South Holston originates at South Holston Lake, and the Watauga originates at Watauga Lake. Our fly shop, if you can see my cursor here, I'll drop the pin. Drop it again just so you can see it. That's our fly shop. We're pretty central to all these locations. And just about the furthest drive away in Kingsport here is our smallmouth bass fishery. We catch a lot of smallmouth there. And then our second of the two smallmouth bass fisheries south of there in Irwin, Tennessee is here. So all of those rivers out of the four, the two trout rivers and the one bass fishery up here in Kingsport, they are all dam released or tailwater fisheries. This one down here in Irwin is kind of special, the Nolichucky River. That's a freestone fishery that comes off the mountaintop. So you'll find smallmouth both in that river and this one here in Kingsport. But the freestone fish tend to be a little more, I don't know, smart. They're in gin clear water. They tend to be more trout-minded smallmouth, I guess is the best way to say that. I'm going to focus most of my time on these two fisheries here, the South Holston right here and the Watauga. So these two fisheries that flow out of the lakes and into Boone Lake. So I think it's just a good idea to get a visual of what's happening with our river systems. So here down at the bottom end of the South Holston River, that would be where the river meets the lake. A lot of our trout are about to turn back and go into that lake and eat shad for a couple months. You know, this river from that point there that I've got marked to this point up here at the very base of the dam, that's about 17 miles of trout water, 1720, I can't remember. But that lower end of the river's got a migratory strain of brown trout, and the whole river has a resident strain of brown trout. Each can produce trout 30 inches long. Whether he decides to stay in the river and make that a long growth and a very well thought out growth cycle on bugs, or whether he runs down into Boone Lake and eats shad for the entire winter to embellish his growth, eventually come April, those fish are going to run back up into the river. So once again, that's right here at the mouth of the river in Bluff City. Those fish are going to come back from Boone Lake and they're going to make their way back up to the dam. Right now, we're catching them right here at the dam. You know, a lot of them are up there spawning. But I'm going to walk you through kind of a year on these tailwaters and just pretend that everything I say about this South Holston is the same on the Watauga here. Both these fisheries work the same way as far as migrations go. First, I've got a folder that kind of shows you they're going to eat streamers when they come up the river. They're going to come up with their friends. A lot of their friends look like this. Big striped bass. And I just couldn't find daytime pictures. We do catch a lot in the daytime, but I think I was looking through some old footage. Here's one that was teased up on a white streamer in low water in the middle of the day in the river. So those guys come up with them. So if you have any streamer junkies in your group, there's those. This is a brown trout that ate a streamer. You might recognize this guy here. That's Gene. This is how I met your group. We brought this fish off of a bank on a white streamer similar to this. I think this may have been it too. But something like that in April, because the fish still have the taste of shad on their tongues as they're making their way up our fishery. And then funny this, Gene, look at this. I never even mentioned that. That's the same bank, the same yellow flowers, not in bloom 2 months later. I thought it was the same fish, but I checked his markings and he's not the same fish, but same thing, a streamer eater, same bank, you know, ate something like that. And they're all on shad for that first couple of weeks of April. I think we caught a lot that day. We had quite a day once the water came up. And even before the water came up, you can see we were catching them on little tiny stuff in low water. But the meat eaters really get going that month. Here's one that ate a white streamer. You can see the white streamer on his rod there. And here's another streamer eater. You can tell too, this is all in the lake. You can see the backdrop of the lake is just locust trees that have only been growing for a few years. Our dam's been being worked on and it's allowed us some opportunity in these migratory I guess pathways that were not there prior to when the dam was being worked on. So we've dialed in this bite on streamer and you can probably enjoy that until late May. Right around late May, this exact same fish that comes out of the woodwork and eats a streamer on 20-pound test no longer participates in that game, and he becomes a very smart fish that primarily eats scuds and midges. And you can see real flat water behind most of our anglers that catch these fish. I think that's George again. I think that's from this last summer. Probably sight fished out of a flat. You can see these fish, the flat water behind the anglers. We see these fish a lot of times 30 minutes to an hour before we catch them. So it's the game that kind of built the company, and I don't want to linger on it a whole lot, but I just wanted to bring up a lot of these pictures to say that the summer months are when we most consistently catch these giant lake run brown trout that run up from Boone Lake. As soon as they move on to bugs, we're dialed in on them. So with that said, I'll show you some of those bugs. When they first come up into the fishery, obviously they're on streamers first, but then you have to start nymphing them almost immediately on tiny little sulfur nymphs like that. I figured that was just a good example of the size and silhouette that you see in the fishery. And that's almost the week that they come off of the streamers. A lot of that has to do with the dam lowering the water and the fish just being more analytical of the bugs in general. About a month or two later, you'll see them transition into kind of small blueing olive nymphs and soft hackles and very small mayfly nymphs. You'll also see them participate in this game. This is a freshwater shrimp, a scud. The scud is their most important diet during their feeding in the summer. This is probably where a lot of our fish become bigger fish than most in the nation, besides the growing season that lasts longer than most of the fish in the nation. And then even with that said, just don't forget that for about 3 months, we're going to be throwing this kind of stuff at them. They will be naive and eating 3X and 4X and stuff like that. When they make their first push up from the lake, they haven't seen anglers for a while, and they're a little more opportunistic. So we don't get that technical that fast. But once we do spend about 4 months in really technical light line, small fly fishing for these trout. So just to give you an example of kind of the intensity of some of the fights, I just have a video here of us trying to land a fish. Let's see.
Once his nose hits that surface and his impact full fins waving at us, we're ready to slide him in. Oh boy, you are the best.
So yeah, you can kind of tell they're pretty heavy fish. A lot of times we're going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes trying to land one of these fish. A lot of coaching's involved. It's fun for me and you. This is a bamboo fly rod this guy has too. You can see the bend in it right there.
Turn, nose me. Keep the nose up.
We ended up getting that one.
On the surface, keep them on the surface, yeah, boy.
And here's a third fight. This one was hilarious. So this is a beginner fisherman. He had touched a fly rod the day before. We had him and his wife, we taught him how to fish for the entire day on the Watauga. This was him about 3 hours into his second day of fly fishing on the South Holston River. So this was the second day. Him and his wife told me, we want to try it. We don't care if we get our butts kicked. We want to go sight fish these big brown trout you're talking about. And we took them to the river, and this kid landed a 26-inch brown trout after about a 25-minute fight. So here's about 30 seconds of that.
To touch it. When he settles back down,
That's why he's smiling, because he has no idea that he's about to lose a fish in his lifetime.
Don't touch it. Don't touch it. There we go. Now, a little bit, but he'll probably stress when he feels you. So, you ready for another one of those? He's in with another pack of Lakers. Holy shit! He's comfortable. He's in with his friends again. Holy shit! Good job, man. You just got to do that like 10 more times. Let him go. Let him go. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. Don't touch it.
He's laughing as this fish is just spooling him. I mean, it's just hilarious. We ended up getting that guy too. Here's netting the fish. This was huge, 26-inch, heavy fish.
Come on, baby.
You're the man.
Oh, shit.
Here's a picture of that same fish right here. And that same day, the same beginner caught this fish, a 22-inch brown trout. Same day, they were just on. I mean, they're just on. Some days you hook 10 and you land 3. How many did you hook that day, George? Usually if you land one, you've battled 2 or 3.
Yeah, that was a tough fight that day.
Yeah, and they can last a long time. So the whole point of that is you're getting your lifetime fish. You're doing a lot by sight. It's basically like underwater dry fly fishing is the best way to put it into perspective. I mean, you see the fish before you catch them. You see the fish even open his mouth and eat an underwater bug before you catch him. You have to line up for him perfectly. So I mean, this is what built the company. Laker fishing on the South Holston is unmatched. The fact that those caliber fish eat diurnally and have to make their diet on scuds just still blows my mind, but that's kind of what we're over there taking advantage of. And then this is like at the end of your day catching giant fish. Maybe Red will cook you some blackened salmon with some homemade chow chow and some zing sauce, some peppercini, and some pickled okra on the side. You might sit down and enjoy it and talk about those giant fish afterwards. And we're going to measure them to make sure they're official. So that's that album that kind of describes the midsummer fishing. But really after summer, when those fish get technical and they start to get in a routine where they're mostly engaged in midge and scud fishing, it does get pretty technical, and it can be a fishery that people consider hard, but it is a 6,000-mile fishery. So whether you have a beginner or not, it allows a beginner an option to catch 10 to 20 wild reproducing trout per day. So really just a great option for everyone. All right, let me look into the folder here and we'll pull up what these fish do next. Next is, I just have it in a folder, November till now, just to kind of show you the types of fish we've been catching this last month or so. So this is all from the last month. These are all brown trout, either pre-spawn, in-spawn, or post-spawn, all caught on either streamers or eggs and attractor flies, mostly mayflies underneath those eggs. And that's all of January. And a couple might be from December, but that's one month that's kind of overlooked. But these fish are going into spawn that time of year. They're doing a lot of stuff. A lot of the big fish that are usually nocturnal are letting their guards down. So that's a great time of year to come visit us. And then you kind of transition into now. Right now, what's going on, let's see, I think I have a video from now. We're fishing the Nolichucky River. So Nolichucky River has Rainbow trout, they are stocked rainbow trout. This is probably the only stocked rainbow trout game that we target and love. It is crazy. I bet both of those fish ate a giant size 2 girdle bug or streamer, and they're nymphed out of really fast water in kind of a freestone whitewater environment. So this is just a special thing that the Nolichucky River allows. It's like a whitewater river, and I couldn't even tell you why they stock these brood trout in there, because we are the only guide service that's taking advantage of them. But I think it's for campground people. That's part of Cherokee National Forest. If you ever thought bananas were bad luck, there you go. Of course, that's a stock trout. So, but yeah, I mean, it's some wild fishing. You can double up on 2 20-inch rainbows in whitewater. And you may have just caught them with a sculpin as your nymph on 2X. So these are all just those same stocked rainbow trout that we find in the river. Here's a clip of Justin coaching a client through landing one of them.
Bring that rod high over my head and keep reeling. There you go.
Where we got to get in.
Yep. Sweep them right. Bring them low. Good. Take your time. Be serious. Take time. Here's your move.
Okay, here you go.
Oh, great fish, dude. Congrats.
All right, so that's the gist of what's going to happen for the next three months in the Nolichucky River. But that's going to coincide with some really good nymph fishing on the lower Watauga River as well. The lower Holston, like I said, as those big migratory fish move back into the river system from the lake, they tend to be more naive and more opportunistic. They'll take some heavier line and some heavier bugs, these rainbows on the Nolichucky included. Once the Nolichucky warms up around late May, you can catch a rainbow here and there. But the cool thing is you start catching smallmouth bass on your rainbow fishing trips. Here's just a few bass that we catch on the Nolichucky River, just pictures of bass with the scenery of the river behind us. You can see it's just more freestone, a little more wild. We have to take the rafts. It's not dangerous, but it's dangerous if you're in a fiberglass boat. So we take the rafts. We don't put life jackets on or anything. We keep them on board, but it's mild whitewater, but just a little too much for a drift boat. This is one of my clients drinking a beer and wade fishing while Justin floats by, probably throwing poppers at that bank. So it's a really fun fishery, especially in the summer for your smallmouth bass fishermen, if you want to come up and smallmouth bass fish with us. And finally, our last river here, if you want a smallmouth bass fish with us on the tailwater bass fishery in Kingsport. That's what the Kingsport fishery looks like. It's a little flatter, a little less whitewater. You can see it's broad, and it's kind of a strange smallmouth bass fishery from what I grew up on, but it produces huge bass, and our anglers can have 40 to 100 fish per day, days out here. Somehow when I go, I only catch 20, but that's because I'm a guide, I guess. But I've seen people catch 100 of these fish a day. And they're just beautiful, beautiful, pristine bass. It's a huge, huge fishery. Mostly those are caught on streamers and poppers, I guess. Things near the surface. Once they turn onto a fly bite, they eat a lot of stuff near the surface. So that's that. I brought some flies that we use on the bass fisheries too, so I think I can switch this back and stop sharing here. That's Drunk and disorderly that you might use on the bass fishery. And then when it warms up, you might use something like a popper. That's my favorite popper, the blue one, because we have a lot of damselflies in the fishery. But if it is early season, you may nymph for bass, which is a really cool experience. A lot of people don't nymph for bass much, but you might find your guide throw a big nymph like that and a classic tequila fly, small, below it, and just kind of hang those down, because a lot of our bass, even up to 4 and 5 pounds in the spring, are actually sitting in runs just keyed in on dead drifting insects. So that's the other cool thing about the Nolichucky, is it's a very insect heavy bass fishery, and the bass don't key in on minnows as early because they have such great protein from hellgrammites and stonefly nymphs in the fishery. And then I think the last thing I was going to mention, see, I mentioned the South Holston trout fishery. The Watauga is just like the South Holston. I guess their only differences are that the Watauga is more of a caddis fishery and the South Holston is more of a mayfly fishery. Watauga is famous for a Mother's Day caddis hatch that tends to happen late April, early May. And the South Holston gets a lot of its dry fly fame from hatches that happen from mid-June until the end of August. That's the sulfur season. So both rivers are extremely good dry fly rivers. They almost can just produce anything you want. Now that we've fished the fishery so long, we are pretty close to being able to just ask you what you want and take you there, between the two 20-mile trout fisheries. I think the last thing I wanted to do was show, let me see. I'll mirror this. Let me share my screen one more time. I wanted to go back to the map and just show you, if you wanted to visit the area, some places you could stay. Here's Kingsport. Let's see, from your end over here on the west side, you're probably going to want to stay in Johnson City here or Kingsport, Kingsport would be an hour drive from our fly shop, which is right here in Elizabethton, Tennessee. Johnson City is the more popular location. But I looked it up and it's really equidistant no matter where you wanted to stay in this big circle here. So you pretty much just want to pick if you're doing a float trip, a smallmouth bass trip. But keep in mind that up here is a lot of the good do-it-yourself wade fishing from Damascus north. And then from Damascus down to our fly shop. All of this green that you see here is Cherokee National Forest. So our fly shop, which is right here, you can drive 10 minutes from there and you can be on a brown trout creek that produces browns up to 20 inches, naturally reproducing stream-born browns. When the glaciers settled, they settled a lot of limestone into this region here where we fish, and not a whole lot over here in the Boone area where I live. So these trout are healthy and plentiful, but they max out at about a 15-inch size. These trout in this region, I guess this would be west of the Blue Ridge Mountains, west of the mountains. So I guess the glaciers just didn't get the limestone all the way up and over, but that limestone truly does make a big difference in your fish size between probably maxing out at 12 to 14 inches and maxing out at 20. So all of your do-it-yourself fishermen, you may want to look into the Damascus area here, or just right here at our shop down here near Elizabethton. Your float fisheries, just come meet us right here at this pen and we'll take you to the rivers. I think the last thing I wanted to mention is just a new indicator setup that I was working on this year. I was going to show y'all. Do any of y'all feel like there's never a perfect indicator? Well, there still isn't one, but has it? I guess nobody had heard of this when I asked before, but this is the Dorsey indicator. Has anyone heard of like the New Zealand wool indicator system? The idea is just to get a piece of yarn onto your line to float things. So the New Zealand wool indicator system would take a piece of your line. Hopefully you can see it here. And it would double up.
Swap off your screen sharing real quick. It'll make it easier for everyone to see.
Oh, sorry. Oh, it's still small, isn't it?
Yeah, I love that New Zealand indicator. I use that.
All right, well, this is just like it. It's the exact same thing, but it's the major disadvantage to the New Zealand. I mean, New Zealand fixed almost every problem, right? But the major disadvantage is being that you can only have one size indicator in that small tubing and one size indicator in the large tubing. So you can basically just have a couple different sizes of indicators. If you want a huge one, you just can't pull enough yarn into it. If you want a really small one, you just can't vary the size. This is a way to have a yarn indicator, but also be able to vary the size of the indicator as you do it. So instead of using the New Zealand tubing, where you would double up your line, you'd stick the tube right over top of that, and it would just pinch it right there. Here's where you'd stick your yarn in, and then you'd push the tube up to kind of create your indicator, and you get kind of this bunny ear looking indicator, right?
Yeah.
Use the tubing, it's not as bunny eared. But I figured out, I guess, a way to remedy that is just don't buy the tubing system. You can buy 100 dental rubber bands, 3/4 inch. And I'm sure some of y'all have heard of this or seen this, but you know, I've truly been experimenting with this for years, and this is what I finally came down to. With that rubber band open, just take your line and stick it on one side. So now you have the rubber band and your loop through the line, and just take that loop and put it around and through. Hopefully you can see that. Around, through, around, through.
Are you putting your line through or your rubber band through?
The line's going around one side of the rubber band.
Okay.
So you can see here, the line's just wrapped 5 times around one side of the rubber band, and then you just let go. So that is exactly what the New Zealand tubing system does. But now
can you move the indicator up and down the line like you can with a New Zealand indicator?
Yes, and it's even more kink free. I think that's the other thing I'm going for here is you can fit any amount of yarn into this now that you want. So if you want a Dorsey indicator, you can stick that in. If you like New Zealand wool, you can pick your tuck to wool and stick it in that loop, and then just push the indicator up to your loop. But the point is, once it's in, you're able to move it, and you now are not limited to that small size indicator. You still get all the same benefits of rapid strike detection and not a lot of lag in your indicator. But to remedy the bunny ears, what you do is this. Pat Dorsey invented this, and it's been around for 30 years, but I figured.
I think I went to sleep.
When we were doing it, we just pulled a couple pieces of poly yarn off. You start with a piece of yarn like that. That's the product. You can get it from any kind of craft store. And then your next phase is you get it like this. You just pull the strands out. When you get the individual strands, you take a brush. I'm not going to do the whole thing, but you would take the brush and brush pieces of the strand. I'm just showing you 2 of them. You'd take 7 of those and then just trim them to the size you want. But instead of taking a piece of yarn, a piece of thread and wrapping it around the middle in order to get, 20 of these yarns in a bag for you to use for the next year, just take a lighter and burn the end of it. I don't know. I think for some reason people forgot about that, but just burn the end of it. And then cut it to your same length that you want. I just cut it with the torch there. And then burn the other end of it. Usually I'll tap that end on a piece of cold metal when I'm doing this in production fashion. But now you have the same thing. You have a tuft of poly yarn that you've pre-prepared and spent hours at home doing it for your year's supply of yarn. But instead of him bunny earing out like that, when you cinch him into your indicator, he tends to take more of a round, cylindrical, or spherical kind of shape. And they're held together real firmly. All you do is when you cinch it on, you cut here and you cut here. If I had scissors, I'd show you. And you'd end up with the same setup. So now for just, an extra 30 minutes of your time, your New Zealand indicator just got more complicated. But once you start using this, you probably won't go back, because this poly yarn, if you can see, it lacks the ability to absorb and hold water. And the New Zealand indicator, as great as the wool is, once it does get waterlogged, you do have to replace it. And this is one of those things that I've found you don't have to replace it. This does remedy that problem. And like I said, it remedies the problem of being able to slide the indicator once you get it on your line. I don't know, that's something I figured out this year once I had back.
My phone wasn't charged up as much as I thought.
What? I think that's the last thing that I wanted to point out. I don't know why I have this. I have this note to mention this fly here, and then I'll open for questions. Some people overthink these striped bass up here, but believe it or not, these striped bass that are 50 pounds, they like that fly the best. So for any of your streamer fishermen, that's just a really easy craft fur fly to tie for the striped bass in this region. And for trout, if you're a streamer guy, yes, I decided I wanted to show you that. This is a great articulated, about 3-inch minnow pattern that's articulated with braid, and that braid gives a lot of action. These are all just little streamer flies that I wanted to show you in case you wanted to visit the region and not hire us or anything. Hopefully people are recording this and kind of like memorize our flies and our streamers and stuff. But I guess now I'll just open it up for question and answer.
Chris, tell us again what's going on in February.
So February, it's just crazy. I mean, it's just crazy. It's massive numbers bite. I will say it's hard to guarantee a big fish, which is, something a lot of people come for. Mm-hmm. But if you want to see a fishery just lights out with 6,000 trout per mile that haven't had a lot of angling pressure, that's what's going on right now. I mean, the type of fishing we're seeing are are just high numbers, fish biting under the boat. I even hate to describe the fishery like it's fishing right now because it's so uncharacteristic of the fishery the rest of the year. And then, if you can bear the weather and stuff, it's 30 degrees or 40 degrees. I will say that, but blue wings hatch daily from 2 to 4 in the afternoon, and you can catch fish on dry. You can switch over to streamer if you want because so many of the fish are post spawn. Mm-hmm. So it might be the most dynamic time of the year, but most of all, it's just time of the year. You're the only boat out there just catching a lot of fish.
Cool. Had nothing wrong with that. Have you seen Sarah and Jonathan lately?
Sarah from the Millstone farmhouse?
Yeah.
I think we lost George there, but
I think.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about.
Sarah was doing well up until about, I'd last talked to her in November. I was surprised they were doing great this year. I think COVID, helped a lot of people in our industry as much as it hurt a lot of people.
Had a lot more people outdoors and exploring.
Yeah. Hell, I couldn't get beginner fly rods in to save my life. I was the retail manager this year while I was recovering, and it was a nightmare trying to get beginner anything into the fly shop.
Were you on the trip with George and Gene when Gene did a backflip out of the boat?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Now that was last year. I think we were fishing with which one of the brothers
Brett.
were we fishing with?
With Brett. You were fishing with Brett.
I can remember his voice saying, "Hold on, Gene, I'm coming."
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he didn't tell me about that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had a fish run towards the boat, so I was leaning back trying to keep my line tacked, and I went right over the back of the gunnel.
Oh my gosh. That's funny. The only two people that have ever fallen off my boat, the second guy that did it was trying to back up and stay tight with a fish.
Yeah.
So you're not alone there. I mean, that's kind of common, especially if you're a do-it-yourself wade fisherman. You know how to walk backwards to stay tight with your fish. We can't blame you.
But fortunately, it was a nice warm day.
Good. You wouldn't want to fall off tomorrow. Yeah, I mean, we caught 10 fish on dry fly yesterday, even though we caught a lot. I mean, that was probably the highlight is the blue wings are back. And, I was sitting there telling my client, this is a blue wing hatch. We're probably going to have to go through 10 of my flies to get bit. And they were just non-selective and just biting everything. I mean, you catch 4 or 5 fish on the surface on anchor, pick up the anchor, move to another dry fly spot, catch 4 or 5 fish on anchor, pick up the anchor, move to the next dry fly spot. Hell, if we had started at 11 o'clock, we may have done 40 on dry fly that day. I mean, the fishery is incredible in February and March. And I don't talk much about the times of year that it's not, but it really is. And I didn't know that until a few years back, but we've started guiding it more. People have started to note these better bites, and we're really getting a lot of people coming between February, March, and April. So, of course, y'all are invited. But the rest of the season, keep in mind, this is a year-round fishery. It's not one of those that's seasonal. That's the most important thing to realize, and why I didn't want to linger on the sight fishing for too long.
What seems to be your busiest month?
April for sure, May and April, but that's just because you have our return clients plus the tourists. June and July are second to that, I'd say, because of all the people that kind of remember those experiences with the lake run trout. And July and August, I'd say, I mean, those are 2 very slow months for most companies that depend on marketing and depend on your natural organic tourism. But, we're pretty established, so we're fortunate to have a lot of trips through July and August. It's not uncommon for me to take 20 to 25 trips July and August and not even experience a summertime break these last few years. That's just because so many people are realizing that the lake run brown trout game is really strong in the summertime. But what we're trying to really do is share with people that from November until now, it's absolutely epic with pre-spawn, during spawn, and then from now until, I mean, we're pretty much trying to just get enough badasses on board to come visit us during the tough times of year, because it's not a fishing issue, it's more of a comfort and time of year issue.
Got you. I think Frank Chambliss has a question over there, but or Bill does. Hey, Frank and Bill, we don't have any audio from you. You're unmuted, but I believe your mic is not working. Let me see.
You can actually send a question if through the chat if you want to, Frank.
Yeah, I just sent you a direct message, Frank. If you want to send your question in through the chat, we can read it out for you there.
Chris, while we're waiting, I got bumped off the meeting. Is Jonathan and Sarah doing okay?
Yeah, out at the Millstone farmhouse.
Yeah, I love those guys.
Yeah, they're doing great. I'm going to stay in touch with them this year, and I'm going to make sure to get them on our website. We're working on getting our flyberry. We're going to have a Trophy Water Guide Service flyberry project, and we're going to have a little flyberry put up in their little carport, you know, just for people to enjoy and see the name Trophy Water Guide Service and our phone number.
Sure.
We're kind of sneaking our way in through the fly patch.
Mm-hmm.
While we're waiting here, I think, let's see.
So lots of fish in February. Maybe not the biggest browns right now. Hey.
Yeah. Yesterday, our best fish. I mean, honestly, the rainbows were the best. We caught multiple rainbows around 15 inches. You know.
Yeah.
Chunky ones. But yeah, late spawn for sure. A lot of the bigger fish did their deed first and kind of circled back and have gone back to the lake. I was surprised we didn't hook one decent sized one in all of that, but that's kind of how that guard dog bite goes when you're catching 60. You know, the big fish are just a little slower to move to your flies, I guess.
Yeah, you got to get down below the other fish.
Yeah. Summertime's a have your cake and eat it too kind of bite. Right now, you can kind of either get numbers or size.
Yeah, the biggest frustration about the sight fishing is keeping the smaller fish off while you get your fly down to the big fish.
Right, that's true. Yeah, they're the ones that stay on the bottom, and they're less likely to elevate for sure. So you really do end up with a guard dog bite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still waiting on Frank's question, but so if someone wants to come up there, they go and they do a float trip with you one day, and they want to go wade. You're suggesting around the fly shop is a pretty decent area to do some wade fishing?
Sure, it depends on time of year. I'd say around mid-June, the fish, there are a lot of brown trout. They get kind of wary, but up until mid-June, all of those fisheries within 10 minutes of the fly shop fish really well. Once June hits, June and July, I'd say the on-foot experiences are primarily learning experiences. You know, it's not a, hey, you're taking a guide trip so that you can walk off this trip and have 20 fish in the bag. It's more of honing experiences. Our fisheries fish like a miniature version of New Zealand, where if you lift your finger wrong, the brown trout runs away. And a lot of those fish you can't catch and have to understand you can't catch them and have to skip them. The fishery gets really weird in the summer, I guess is the best way to say it.
A lot more technical almost.
A lot more technical, because you're not looking at brook and rainbow trout. You're looking at brown trout. You're looking at a fish that lives twice as long and is naturally just more cautious. And by age, I mean, truly live 15 to 20 years, where our brook and rainbows live less than 10. So you've got to give them a lot of credit for experience. And then by nature, they live under boulders, become nocturnal, and then they become piscivorous. They truly do what the book says. They become piscivorous around 12 to 14 inches. And once they hit that exponential growth and that nocturnal feeding, and they learn to stay under rocks, you can fish a creek 20 days a year and not see one fish over 14 inches. But believe it or not, those fish actually are there. I just learned that a couple years ago, 13 years in. But brown trout are really interesting fish. And the stream-born brown trout, as much as it's a claim to fame to catch one out of our tailwaters, I tried all year, and my best fish this year was 16 inches. I only moved 2 at 20 inches in those creeks. You have to cover miles and miles of water, usually after rainstorms, jigging crayfish and streamers. Most of it has to be tight line fishing under waterfalls. It's just very untraditional fishing that nobody taps into. But it is, every inch of that fishery is like that. If you can imagine it, that it is that.
Chris, one of the things, and you may have already mentioned this, that I think is one of the most rewarding things about brown trout fishing on South Holston is those are all stream-born fish. There are no stock browns on the South Holston.
Yes. They don't exist anymore because they haven't stocked them, I think, since about 17, beyond their lifespan was the last time they stocked brown trout in the fishery. So it's the limestone. You can look it up too. It's the Fontinalis, the Elodea, the musk grass. We have these 3 really primary grasses. And the South Holston is one of the more powerhouse fisheries on the East Coast.
So we have a question here. I think you covered it earlier, but what is the best time of the year to catch a trophy brown over 25 inches, and in which river would you guide that?
Sure. I can't answer which river because seasonally that 25-inch brown will probably be taken out of the Watauga during November and spawn, or in the next few months, March and April, you could easily nymph a fish over 25 inches as he's making his way up from the lake. You could run into one on nymphs in the Watauga River. As far as the South Holston River goes, and both, any day, any time of year on a float with us now. So like, that's my new way of answering the question. But I think when people ask that, they're asking, when can you almost guarantee it? Or when is a consistent time? And I would say midsummer, when they, let's say mid-June to late August, when they are in their huge growing season, primarily feeding on scuds and midge larvae. That's when they're actually making the most mistakes on those small bugs, because if you're eating small bugs and you're 10 pounds, you have to eat a lot of small bugs. So you have to make that mistake multiple times a day. So from June 15th until the end of August, or let's say the beginning of August, if there's a lot of guides that year and a lot of anglers that year, a lot of it has to do with how long the fish see angler pressure in really gin clear water.
Hey, Bill, we have your audio now if you guys want to bring your question up.
I haven't heard you mention anything about a brook trout. Is there any brook trout fishing around?
It's everywhere. In North Carolina, it's actually hard to find them, just a few streams. But in East Tennessee, I mean, it's everywhere. Within driving range of our shop, I can take you to 3 different brook trout fisheries in less than 15 minutes. All 3 of them running off of different mountaintops. So
what about, when's the best time to come down there for the big stripe? When striper running?
Big striper run's going to start here around probably mid-March, but really late March to tax day is on fire. Late March to tax day is when they're pushing up from the lakes. They're kind of sensing that urgency to spawn. They're acting crazy. They're making big runs overnight. And they're first filtering into the lower miles of the river.
Okay, thank you.
So do you guys do a lot of or any guided trips at night?
Not anymore. Now that we're so busy, we really don't. But we brought on a 6th guide this year, and with my back surgery, I'm thinking of having a couple days off. So ask us is the best way to put that. But we jump on it eagerly a while back, but now taking a trip at night often means compromising yourself for your trip the next day.
Right.
So, unless somebody were to pay us 2 float trips worth of pay. But I will say I've done it multiple times. It's very fun. It's worthwhile. I'll also say, other than keeping you safe and navigating you from putting in a takeout, we're not going to advantage you much at night, except just having the boat, having the experience. We'll probably advantage you a good bit by what we know, but I'd say at night it's still kind of a crapshoot. And I will say also that I think August and September, the hottest months of the summer, it sounds like that's when the fish are really on as far as night fishing goes. I've heard a lot of guys say, the heat of the night in September and the heat of the night in October, hot days in September and October, because I guess that's when big brown trout are thinking about their pre-spawn feed.
All right, guys. I think, Bill, are you there?
Yeah.
Right,
so I'm most interested in a trophy brown. So you're saying that's actually flat water fishing, meaning at the entrance to the lake in like June?
Yeah. Starting in mid-June, those fish will actually be about 7 to 10 miles up the river, so they'll be more in the middle of the river system around then. But yes, they are lake-run brown trout primarily that do migrate up from Boone Lake starting in April. But the sight fishing, the reason that it becomes really good about June is because of the dams. It's just simply they have a lot of water in the lakes. There's a lot of February, March, and April rains, so they're going to be doing a lot of flood control. And the latest I've seen that flood control prevent that low water sight fishing is June 15th. The rainiest year we ever had, I remember waiting until June 15th to get the fresh shot at the Lakers that we like to sight fish. And
so when you say sight fish, you mean from the boat or wading or both?
From the boat, occasionally wading. If the right one lets his guard down and puts himself in some small water and is engaged in a big enough feed where he's let his guard down and become approachable, we've caught fish 26 inches out of 1 foot of water. Most of those fish are going to be caught in 4 to 6.5 feet of water. So deep, but not so deep that just 6X and 1 single tungsten midge under a dry fly doesn't get it done. And don't tell anyone else, but that is the only thing that gets it done.
So, I love the visual part of it. So whether from the boat or from wading, it's that time of year you actually are able to see them and visually fish for them.
Yes, sir. And if you're an experienced angler, that's probably what we're going to do almost all of the day.
Sounds wonderful. And by the way, George Fant, you never told me about this fishery.
Yeah, I put up a couple of posts on the Facebook page. That is my biggest brown I've ever caught in my life on the fly rod.
They may have been slightly vague to hide that area.
I thought you were hiding this from us.
No, I put up a couple of. All you gotta do is ask when you want to go back, Bill. I'll go.
Let's go when the big browns are fired. So mid-June, let's go. My birthday is June 17th. Let's go.
It doesn't take much to convince me to go up there.
You don't like work any more than I do you?
I'd much rather be fishing.
Sounds great, guys.
All right. Does anyone else have any more questions there? Nope.